Hey friends, thank you so much for checking out another one of our videos. In this week's conversation, I'm going to be talking with Rhonette Hukill. She's the co-founder of Lift Disability Network. But specifically in this conversation, we're going to be talking about how she juggles her dual relationship as caregiver and wife with Jim. It's complex and it's way more challenging than you might think. The biggest thing that I took away from this is that interviewing people is to always have tissues on hand. You'll see why. But one of the things before we jump into that conversation, if you can click subscribe down at the bottom of the screen, that will be a huge help for us in our YouTube channel. So it takes 2 seconds. So go ahead and do that now and enjoy this conversation. Well, we are here with Rhonette Hukill for this conversation. And I know you love being on this side of the camera.
I do, yeah.
This is your favorite thing in the world to do, isn't it?
No.
You've been waiting your turn, and it's finally here.
So excited.
Well, I do know that this is not your favorite thing.
No.
And I want to just let you know right away just how much I appreciate you being willing to kind of go through something uncomfortable for you. I think it's going to be valuable for our community and anybody else that stumbles across the video. But before we jump into kind of the nitty gritty of your life, that makes you feel more comfortable, doesn't it? You've been here obviously from the beginning of Lift Disability, and your role has kind of ebbed and flowed. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of Lift Disability and how your role has progressed in that as it's kind of evolved over the years?
Yeah. Well, we're 20 plus years into this. Started, out of a real need for us personally, just finding tools to help us. Me serving as a caregiver, Jim with a major disability, and just any resource out there that would help us, and really coming up empty. When it came to like the whole family unit and not just the individual. And so just decided to dive in and do it ourselves, which is crazy. Early on, I think it was like, you do this, I'll do this. It was whatever. Just
Everybody did everything.
Everybody did everything. And, and roles have changed a little bit over the years. We kind of fell into natural roles. And I've been told that I'm a numbers person.
You are.
And Jim even said to someone the other day on the phone that I wake up talking and thinking about numbers. So just having that managerial background, just spending a lot of time looking at finances, which is not the fun thing to do, but somebody has to do it. So that's kind of the role that I finally morphed into. And so official title now is operations manager. So I am the one around here that tells everybody no and counts all the beans. So
yeah, but you do a good job with that. I don't feel rejected when you tell me no somehow. So there you go. I don't know.
You don't go off smirking?
No, I don't go home crying at night.
Okay.
Like I still feel like I can do my job well.
Okay.
So you do a good job. You say yes way more than you say no, by the way.
Okay.
You've joked about that a few times.
It's all for the cause.
What? So if I understand, so you're really looking for a unique ministry that was ministering to the entire family, and you just weren't finding it. Is that
Right.
That's right? And so you created it, you and Jim.
Yeah.
It started in your living room, right? Like there was a time where the Lift office was literally your living room.
It's been multiple places over the years. We've just wherever we could find a free space, we'd use it, or we'd be at home. And now we're blessed with a really nice office space. So just whatever to get the work done affordably. But yeah, we've worked with multiple organizations over the years, and the focus early on was always on the individual, and we just noticed a big gap of what do you do with the moms and the dads and the siblings and those that encircle that family, even beyond into the community, the church, and so that's kind of we didn't know what we were doing.
And that's been my favorite part of learning, even before I was working for Lift, but the family atmosphere, and even coming and volunteering at camp a few years ago and seeing not just the person with a disability, but their siblings, who a lot of times are the ones kind of in the shadows. The parents are putting all of their attention, or a lot of their attention, on the person with disability, for rightly so. But you've got these siblings that are going, hey, I'm over here too. Right. And I love that about camp. And and not just at camp, that 1 week of camp, but year round. There's this really focus on the entire family. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
But it all started with you and Jim, and kind of this idea, and Jim's the vision guy.
Very much.
But how did you meet Jim?
Well, that's a long time ago.
A couple
27 years ago, I think. 28? Yeah. We met 28 years ago. Married 27. So, yeah, his cousin and I, Aubrey, are really good friends. And I was living in Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin at the time. And Aubrey lived down the street from me. And he and I did a lot of work with, he attended a sister church to my church. And we kind of started a young adults group together. And so we hung out a lot together. And when he and his wife were getting married, Jim came into town for the wedding. And so there was just like a group of us that hung out that week and got to know him a little bit. And if you know Aubrey, and actually a lot of, Jim has, I don't know, 47,000 cousins. I'm not even sure. But like most of them are redneck guys who like to be outdoors and do outdoorsy things. And so they would leave Jim in the dust that week and be off, you know, canoeing, kayaking, hiking. And Jim obviously can't.
It's hard
do
to
that.
kayak in a wheelchair.
It is
yeah.
a little complicated. And so I happened to be on vacation that week because of the wedding, and my sister was in town. And so he would call often and say, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And we're like, "Well, we were going to go to church." So the first time we ever like went anywhere together, I guess, was my sister and I went and picked Jim up in his big, huge, full-size van that had the ramp that flipped out. And
nice.
And we had no idea what we were doing. Like, yeah, we'll come get you. We'll go to church. And got him in the van and got him locked down. And he was a little taken back that these two girls that had never really experienced disability were willing to put him in the van. And
I'm sure he wasn't minding the attention, though.
He probably was not. Yeah, for sure. And so fast forward a little bit, we right before he was touring at the time, doing a lot of speaking, singing, and so right before he left to go off and do his thing, he left me one of his cassette tapes.
Oh, nice.
That's back in the day.
Yeah.
So, yep, Jim Hukill cassette tape. And so somehow the week later, was going on a mission trip. And the only thing that ended up, well, not the only thing that ended up in my suitcase, but one of the few things that ended up in my suitcase was the Jim Hukill.
Nice.
I was going to say CD. That's how you even write it. It was
no, that's way
cassette.
before then.
It wasn't 8-track, but it was definitely a cassette. It was
nice.
fabulous. So anyway, mission trip, Mexico, got heat stroke, and so ended up in the infirmary, and they would not let me have any visitors or anyone with me, and so all I had was my Bible. And I had my old boombox with the Jim Hukill cassette tape. And so just spending some time in the Word and prayer and not wanting to be there and listening to Jim Hukill. And he'll joke and tell you it was the fever, but God.
Maybe a combination.
It could be. And now I would, yeah, anyway. God began to speak to me and said, "You're going to go back and marry Jim Hukill." And
oh, wow. And this is like, you had met him like a week or a couple weeks earlier?
A couple weeks earlier. And I was like,
bold. That's very bold.
No, thank you. Like, I really knew nothing about disability whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And I was a really new believer, like just a couple months into being a believer, actually. And so the thought of somebody that traveled the country and spoke and sang and did ministry evangelism, that just really didn't interest me whatsoever. And so I was like,
yeah, we're going different directions a little bit, yeah.
So I was like, God just never shut up about that. And so I was like, okay, God, if this is you, then you got to show me a sign. So got home from Mexico, survived that trip, and I was going through the voicemails, the answering machine. Beep.
I've heard of them, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, yeah, forget you're young. And listening, and here's Jim Hukill on my answering machine. And as I was listening to him, "Hey, I'm coming back through town," the phone rings, and it's him. And he's like,
wow.
"Hey, I'm here in town. You want to like go grab some dinner?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." So like,
there's your sign, right?
That was, more than one sign actually. That was two. And so we went out to dinner, and I brought the 10,000 pictures I had from Mexico, and we went through those, and that was it. Like, he went back. He was living in Virginia at the time and traveling, and I was in Wisconsin. And so we developed a long-distance relationship, a lot of chit-chatting over the phone, back before cell phones. So huge phone bills. And eventually, so that was July when we met. November, he asked me to marry him, and we were married in May.
Wow.
Following year. So
That accelerate. That went very fast.
that went very fast. Yeah.
So, so relationships are complicated. All relationships are, and you have not been exposed into the disability community before Jim.
Yeah, a little bit, like from some friends and stuff
Okay.
that were involved in a camp that was up close to
Okay.
us, but not.
Not like submerged in like the daily life. And so you are learning how to date long distance. You're like getting to know this guy. Plus you're now fully submerged in the disability community. Was there some awkward moments kind of learning, getting some traction in that relationship, or was it just smooth sailing from day one?
Well, Jim grew up in a very traditional home. So, Bob will believe in family. So they were not too keen on the idea of me learning any of the personal care up front. And so his mom taught me a lot of things that were, to a certain point. And then the rest was just going to be once we got married.
Surprise! Here's how it's really going to be.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, this will be, Jim and I talked through several things. And I was young and naive and thinking I could conquer the world. And so, it wasn't until like honeymoon night where I was like, wow, this is serious. Like, I have to get this guy ready. Like, get him showered, get him in a chair, get him ready for the day. Like, at the time,
it's
Jim,
a lot.
he still moved his hands. And so the level that he is now, maybe the care is a little bit different, but like he could still do some things on his own, but still more than I thought was possible for me.
So this probably isn't the right word, but before you actually were married, maybe a little sheltered from what the full experience was going to be like.
Yeah.
So you enter into not just a newlywed wife, but you're also a caregiver now.
Yes.
And those are two really different roles. How did you, or not just did you, but how are you managing those two really distinct roles? Same people, both you and Jim. You're his wife.
Yes.
He's your husband, but you're also his caregiver. So how do you juggle those two relationships in your marriage? Or do you?
The first few years were hard. Like just trying to. Both of us married late in life and very independent, and I just set in my ways. Jim was set in his ways, and so there was a lot of like wrestling through that. And I think it took a few years before we hit a groove and we realized that, okay, there's disability in our world and it's always going to be there. And we talk a lot about how we just put that on a shelf and it's there and we need to deal with it. But it's not who Jim is. It's not who I am. We're still husband and wife and like working on that piece instead of the disability itself. That's just always going to be there. That's a stress of life that we have to deal with. And I would say as we've gotten older, and maybe I need to find some people older to really help me through this process. But as we've gotten older, I think that there's been ebbs and flows of that, and like now we're in a season where it might be harder again.
Sure.
As I'm getting older as a caregiver.
Right. Oh, what have you learned about yourself? Probably more in the area of caregiving. Like, what have you learned about yourself in this last 28 years?
Well, I'm a pretty selfish individual, and I would prefer to not have to work as hard as I do some days. And then also pretty resilient. Like God helps me tremendously to keep going when I don't really want to. So I don't know if that's a character of mine or that's
That's really good. What would you say to there's a lot of caregivers that are probably watching the video.
I hope so.
And I think one of the things that I'm learning in the disability community is it can be very lonely, and it feels like you're kind of isolated and you're just kind of figuring this thing out on your own. So what advice would you give to whether it be a wife that's the caregiver or a husband that's caregiver, or maybe it's a parent, you're just pouring yourself in and you feel so alone. Like, what advice would you give to the caregivers that might be them?
Well, one, I know without a doubt, like, I can't do this without a constant surrender every day. Today's a tough day, actually. And that song from Maverick City that goes, I think it's Come Again, and it's like, you love it when I'm empty, and I'm like, whoa, that just kills me every time. Because when I'm empty, he's great. And I just know I can't do this without him. Yeah. So leaning into God when you're empty is what you have to do, because there's just no way you can do this in your own will, in your own power. And then two, that's one of the harder things, I think. That's a daily thing for me. The other one, and it may be harder for other individuals, is finding your tribe. And I have my girlfriends I like to hang with and party with, and but they don't get me like I want them to, because they don't live the world of disability. I love hanging out with these people, but I have a small, and I would say it's really just 2 people that are my tribe that know me in and out, because they are in the exact same situation I am. And in fact, one of them I texted this morning. So, and she's like, "Woo, wave the white flag, girlfriend. Nice. You go. I honor you and I respect you." So don't even have to tell her very much. Just have to say, this is what's happening today. And she's like, I gotcha. Yeah. She understands. And multiple things come from her on a different day when hopefully I'm a little more up than she is. So
it's a two-way road for sure.
It's a two-way road. And I've seen that in our own ministry for sure, that, some of the moms, when they get together and they're just hashing out ideas of how to care for their kids and stuff. And that's a little different from my caregiving role, but still so meaningful for me to watch how they understand each other and don't even have to really say with words, like, I get you. Yeah.
In the disability community, we've already said, like, you feel so isolated, and there's times where you don't want to go out. And so how do you find that tribe? Like, that's got to be, like, it's so needed, but it's got to be so hard to find at the same time. Like how did you find your people? Was it just putting yourself out there? Because I know a little bit of your personality. You would rather be at home most of the time. You don't want to put yourself out there. Yeah. So how do you find your tribe?
For me, it was, and I'm not a natural, like, girlfriend, so, like, I knew that was something God wanted me to do, and so I made it a matter of prayer, like, send me the people that I need to not just help me, but challenge me as well. And that's not an easy prayer for me to pray, because, like, being a friend is hard, and so knowing that that's vital for your own personal growth, whether you have a disability or not, and just within the disability community, just having that, is so important. So prayer was, like, really where I started with that. And then, I don't know, maybe it's this radar thing that comes up, like, when you're, like, people would start popping in and I'm like, oh, she's a caregiver, and so,
I bet she would understand
I bet she would understand. And then just watching God kind of develop those relationships. Like, I've tried to force some along the way, and then others just naturally, and some of them I would not choose. There are some friends that I have that definitely understand me, and they're in my world of disability, that maybe rub me a little too much. Like, but still, like, God has placed us together for a reason. Right. And so that's part of being friends. So I think, like, within your church community, within just your, if your kids are in a program that is for people with disabilities, there's got to be other moms there that you're naturally going to connect to. And then there are some caregiving groups out there, and naturally there's Lyft.
Right. A shameless plug there. Yeah. And I was going to say that, that's why we exist, is because it's not just about the person with disability, but it's for the caregiver, it's for the mom, the dad, the sibling. And we're creating and have some things that are in place that are just about relationships. Yeah. I love the Bible journaling class. That's primarily for moms, is usually who comes.
Yeah, guys will RSVP, and I just sort of...
Yeah, we ignore them. I've never been invited to that group. I don't know why. But it's just, there's so many beautiful pockets, I feel like, and that's really what we're working hard, is to build that community. So it's not just an event. It's like, oh, that was a cool event. That was a cool camp. But you actually develop these relationships. And that you can carry each other's burdens. I mean, that's what the Bible teaches us to do. And I feel like in the disability community, maybe those burdens are a little bit heavier, and you can't do it on your own. That was well said. So you've given some advice on how to, what encouragement would you say to the caregiver watching that feels like they can't go on? And one of the things from the beginning that we really wanted these videos to be is for a person in the middle of a storm or adversity. It's hard to see anything other than the storm. And I'm not saying you've made it through, you've arrived. Congratulations, Rhonni.
Yeah.
But you've been in this story for a long time, and you've seen rough times and you've seen good times. So you kind of have a different perspective than somebody maybe that's new in the caregiving community, that doesn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. What advice or what encouragement would you give to the ones that are just ready to give up?
There's a couple things I think that are really important to just realize as a caregiver or as someone within the disability world. It is okay that your life is different than everybody else's. And, you're not making excuses. It's just your life looks different. And so don't feel bad on the days where you have to adjust your schedule and do things differently because your world is just not the same. And that's intentional because God gave you that. And that's the other thing, I guess, that's hard and good in that is God gave you your life and he sees you. He sees you when you're struggling. And lean into him.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for being a part of these videos that we've started. And you're almost through. Hang in there. And I would say, for me as an outsider, I'm not a caregiver. And I would say this to you, but I would also say it to other caregivers. I don't know the right phrasing of this, but inspired for sure. Because I think naturally humans, maybe this is just me, naturally for me, we complain a lot. We just find negative things and we kind of go on from there. But my goodness, your and Jim's relationship is an inspiration. And whether people voice that or not, people see that and they're challenged by it. I think I'm challenged by it. And but I'm also encouraged and see it shines a spotlight on my life. It's like, ooh, you probably need to fix that, Ryan. And so for caregivers that are out there also, people see what you're doing, and you feel isolated, but people are watching in a good way.
Yeah.
And so thank you for. I know you say you're selfish. I see so many selfless qualities in you, and appreciate that. Learned a lot from you. So thanks, Rhonni.